reading the Arabic if one is not able to understand and therefore not able to recognize those ideas. In very brief terms, I mentioned multiple ahadith, the video and the examples of the lives of the Imam, specifically where they emphasize the need to understand. And the Imam, on numerous occasions, specifying that there is no good in recitation without reflection. And to make sure that we discourage those who are studying to read, I say and emphasize that reading should be utilized as a step towards understanding, not to think that I read, therefore I'm good. No. I read, I'm learning how to read the Arabic of the Quran, how to read the Quran so that I can understand it. This is in brief what was shared in the video. If you had the opportunity to listen to the video, perhaps share your comments or if you have further questions, we can raise them. Then, inshallah, continue as we started on the Sura Yusuf. We started last week, we started the first week of the Surah. We said it is a Surah that is revealed in Mecca and in response to the question that people asked the Prophet, their attempt or their intention seems to be, or seems to have been, the effort to prove that he has knowledge, or he has knowledge of God. Therefore, they used to go to the Mushrikeen of Quraysh, the Mushrikeen of Quraysh used to go to the Jews and Christians, or specifically in this case, it may have been the Christians, and tell them, give us some questions that we could ask that he would not know, and therefore we would prove that he has no connection to God and revelation. So they came and asked him, how come the Israelites, children of Israel, ended up in Egypt when they used to reside in Canaan? They used to reside on the other side of the river, the sea, and they ended up in Masr. What happened? Masr, he did not respond, rather he waited for revelation, and when the revelation came, he recited to them from Surah, or he recited Sura Yusuf, which did not just answer their questions, but gave them details beyond what even the Christians or the Jews at the time knew. Some details that they did not have, the Surah gave. And also this Surah clarified some details that in their books it had become a narrative that ridicules the prophets of God, specifically Yaqub or Israel in the Torah, and specifically the Injil. In the Torah, we have also texts that ridicule Yaqub alayhi salam, and the Quran clarified some of those details in a way that make him above what they had described. Similar to other stories and narratives that they had, even about Prophet Musa, Prophet Dawood, Prophet Sulaiman. There are, unfortunately, in the Torah and the Injil, there are texts and narratives that ridicule these messengers of God, and Quran came to clarify and purify. Stories. stories that is ridiculous regarding the prophets and beyond Allah, Yaqub alayhi salam or Musa alayhi salam and so on. The answer is, it is because the people who advocated were full of error. The people who were sinful, full of error, to justify their positions, regardless of their errors, they fabricated those narratives. Similar to, who can tell me, what is this Quran is on? Any idea? So, Muawiyah, he wanted to justify his position. He was living in lavish life, going after his, indulging in worldly pleasures, and wanted to justify his position as Khaliq, because that's what he was claiming to be. Khaliq of Rasulullah, the successor of Rasulullah. So how could he justify his position? He started fabricating and made fabrications of narratives that are ridiculing of Rasulullah, accusing him of all sorts of things. We were looking at gender in a certain way, and so on and so forth. So that is very much similar to what some of the scholars they fabricated narratives that are ridicule young people. Then the Quran came to say, now who was the prophet? I'll give you an example. But one of the stories that the Quran will come to back today, or perhaps maybe part of it, when Yaqub alayhi salam was informed by his children that they told him who ate Yusuf. We went to praise, and the wolves came and ate Yusuf. And did. In their books, they say that he started weeping and crying. He believed their story. He started weeping and crying, and when they were offering him condolences, anyone who came to offer him condolences, he rejected it. He said, go, I don't accept it. He didn't want to see anyone, he didn't want to talk to anyone. He was displaying extreme grief and distress. Quran, on the other hand, says, it's when he did not even believe their narrative. As soon as they told him, I cannot live, this is a story that I'm making up to your nafs, you follow your desires, your nafs. It is a matter that you fabricate, and Allah musta'an wa God is my aid and helper against what you are describing. So he didn't even believe their story. Yes, he was in grief. His grief was about the fact that his children committed such a sinful act, lying, deceptive, and so on. Again, Quran responded to the question in a beautiful manner, gave details of the story that they did, and described the story from the beginning of the dream and ending with the interpretation of this dream. It's a beautiful story that starts with the dream and ends towards the end of the surah. He says, this is the truth. Started with. So the story starts with Yusuf. Last session we finished at the third ayah. One. said of this area refers to the prophet not knowing the story, being unaware of the story, nothing nothing more than that, not in a derogatory manner, rather just declaring that you have no clue what the story. It is in fact further proof of his prophethood, the revelation, just like we said. The question that often comes up, perhaps it's good to respond to it here as well. Did the prophet know how to read and write? So often people ask. And does the son of me mean that he never knew how to read or write? The response in the school of Ahmed is very clear. Meaning either from Quran or has not been taught by anybody. Nobody taught him. He did not go to the school. He did not taught any teacher. He did not see any teacher. That from that mistake. Did he know how to read Quran? Of course he did. Now, Shadidul or somebody here is memorizing the surah. Yes. The one who is strong in his hours, is the one who taught him. So he knew God says to him, meaning he knows how to read. And he had his word in hand and he right. Before the Quran, he never wrote anything. Before the Quran, this is a proof of his miracle of the Quran not teaching. This belief here is a proof also of revelation. The fact that he was unaware when tweeted before the Quran, he didn't write. Another ayah. وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ. In other ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, before the Quran, you never wrote a book, never wrote anything. Because that would have made people doubt. إِذَنْ لَارْتَابَ الْمُبْطِلُونَ. Here, before the Quran, لَمِنْ قَبْلِهِ, you didn't know. لَمِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ, you didn't know many of these things. Okay? These stories that are revealed to you in the Quran, you didn't know. So this is again further proof of his prophethood. Then the start of the surah, this is the response. إِذْ قَالَ يُوسُفُ, when Yusuf said to his father, لأبيه, يا أبتي, my father, إني رأيت, surely I saw, رأيت, saw. Here is referred to a dream. So he saw doesn't necessarily mean physically in the or in the state of being awake. In a dream, it is also referred to as seeing. In fact, the dream in the Arabic is referred to as ru'ya, vision, seeing. Ru'ya comes from ra'aytu, I saw. Okay? Ra'a, to see, he saw. Ru'ya is a vision, something that he saw. And it's actually a vision in terms of a dream. Yeah? So he says, I saw in my dream, in other words, أحد عشر كوكبا, 11 planets. And والشمس والقمر رأيت لي ساجدين. And the sun and the moon, I saw them for me or towards me, they are prostrating, sajideen. Sajideen is the plural of sajid, one in the action of sujood, fa'il. So sajid is the one who's doing the sujood, and sajideen is the plural of that. A few things. One here regarding the Kawakib, أحد عشر كوكب. Yusuf alayhi salam by then had 11 brothers. Yes, according to the riwayat, 10 of them were from other mothers, and one of them was from both his father Yaqub and his mother. However, according to some narrations, his biological mother passed away during the time of the giving birth to his brother, his younger brother Benjamin. And therefore, the mother that he saw in the dream was his aunt, his mother's sister, who was also married to Yaqub, and he referred to her as his mother. Okay? The Quran later on referred to her as his mother. This reminds me of the term ab. So ab and abawah. Towards the end of the story, the term used for the parents who did sujood was abawah. He brought them, raised them on his arsh. Okay? So abawah means the two parents, but it is different to walidain. Okay? What is the difference? Walidain are also the two parents, but it refers to biological parents. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, towards the end of his life, he sought forgiveness for his parents. But which ones? Their biological parents. رَبِّ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ وَلِمَنْ دَخَلَ بَيْتِيَ مُؤْمِنًا وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ وَلَا تَزِدِ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا تَبَارًا. So he prays for his walidain because they were upon the true path. On the other hand, he says, the Zalimeen, the oppressors, you do not increase them except in loss. Tabar. What happens to his father who died as an unbeliever? What happens? Was he praying for him? Was he saying, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ, and then saying, وَلَا تَزِدِ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا تَبَارًا? Praying for that father? No. That was his uncle, whom he referred to as Abati. Ab, not Walid. Okay, so Walid is the biological, and Ab is the father who raises, parents who raise. So one who has the rights of parenthood on someone. So in this case, the narration says Shams referred to his mother, Rahil, who was his basically mother after the departure of his mother, and Qamar was his referring to his father. Okay. Now you might ask why Shams, the mother, the son, Shams meaning the son, why Shams, the mother, and Qamar, the father. Yeah. In Arabic, Shams is actually feminine, and Qamar is masculine. Yeah, Qamar we say hada Qamar. Okay, Shams we say hadihi Shams. So Shams or the sun in Arabic, everything in Arabic is either masculine or nouns are either masculine or feminine. Even inanimates, okay? Table, it is feminine. Why? Don't ask me. Chair, kursi is masculine. هذا kursi. Why? Don't ask. It's just contractual. Okay. Or you could say arbitrary. Is that the better term? Yeah. Arbitrary has no reason, no sense to it. That's how it is. So it's arbitrary in in Arabic, everything is either, every noun is either masculine or feminine. So in this case, he says, I saw 11 planets, كوكبا, and I saw Shams and Qamar, the sun and the moon, prostrating towards me. And the narration says that Shams was his mother and Qamar was his, or the moon was his father. Next ayah. Any questions so far, comments? Rahid. Yeah. It seems to have been his aunt, based on the riwayat, his mother's sister, and they were children of one of the governors, actually, both of them. So then, in the next ayah, sorry.
Maybe Muhammad Ali to read a few verses.
Okay.
Which verses?
Recite? Okay. So let's pause with a recitation of the verses 4, 5, and 6. Let's try and cover those, inshallah. Okay. Salah, Alhamdulillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن إذ قال يوسف لأبيه يا أبت إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخواتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا
إخوتك.
قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو مبين وكذلك يجتبيك ربك ويعلمك من تأويل الأحاديث ويتم نعمته عليك وعلى يعقوب كما أتمها وعلى يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق إن ربك عليم حكيم صدق الله العلي
اللهم صل على محمد. محمد.
So again back to the story. Ayah 4 ended with him narrating his dream to his father. When did this happen? Was it a specific time? And did his father worry for a specific reason? There's a hadith from Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam.
اللهم صل على محمد.
He narrates, it's a very long hadith, along with the story actually it goes. So Abu Hamza al-Thamali, he says, I prayed with Ali ibn Hussein alayhi salam, Salatul Fajr, on a Friday. When he finished, فلما فرغ من صلاته وسبحته. So what did he do after Salat? Tasbih. Okay. Subha is the name of the beat. So immediately after Salat, he did his tasbih. So one of the most recommended acts right after prayers is tasbih. فلما فرغ من صلاته وسبحته نهض إلى منزله. He went to his home. I was with him, so he called one of his servants and he said to her, make sure nobody passes today, passes by my door asking, except that you feed them. So, and he specified, اليوم يوم الجمعة. Today is Friday. So that day is a day to be extra generous. Yes? قلت له, he says, I said to him, not everyone who's asking is genuine. ليس كل من يسأل مستحقا is deserving. So he said to him, the Imam responded, I am fearful that somebody asks and he deserves and we don't feed him and we reject them. In other words, فينزل بنا أهل البيت ما نزل بيعقوب. What happened to Yaqub ends up happening to us, Ahl al-Bayt. So what happened to Yaqub alayhi salam? The Imam narrates, ما نزل بيعقوب عليه السلام. He says, the Imam, after saying that, he says, أطعموهم, feed them, feed them. On Friday, whoever asks you, feed them. So then he says, إن يعقوب عليه السلام كان يذبح كل يوم كبشا. Yaqub عليه السلام, every day he used to slaughter one sheep. And he used to give the meat فيتصدق منه ويأكل هو وعياله. He would feed in charity from it, and he would eat him and his family. وإن سائلا مؤمنا صواما مستحبا. He says there was on a Friday a person who was needy, and he was a believer, and he was often fasting. Sawama is an attribute of doing Sawm frequently. Okay? Like Awama. Okay? Awam is one who stands up in prayers frequently. There's a poem, I'm still in the month of there's a poem in which the poet says, if somebody, somebody did so many salihat, including وصام ما صام صواما إلى مدد. he fasted and fasted, became Sawam, became one who fasts frequently with no boredom, no tiredness. وَقَامَ مَا قَامَ قَوَّامًا بِلَا كَسَلٍ. And he stood and stood so frequently, so he became one who established prayers frequently with no laziness. And he did and did and did, and yet he came on the day of judgment without the love of Imam Ali alayhi salam. None of that would benefit him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And some might say, why? How could that work? I tell them, without the love of Ahlul Bayt, he could become a fasting and one who establishes prayers and then goes and kills innocent people ignorantly or deliberately, whichever way. Like the Khawarij, and what they did, they had the mark of prostration on their foreheads. If you read the history, Khawarij used to have the mark of prostration. They used to recite Quran, not just recite frequently, but recite very well. In fact, one of the stories I shared last night in the video, some of you would watch and benefit and share, help us benefit as well. I shared a story of a man who was reciting Quran in Kufa, and Imam Amir, he said to one who was praising him, don't rush in judging. And that was one of the people who fought in Nahrawan against Imam Ali. He was one of the Khawarij who needed a lot of turmoil and mischief. So again, it is very important that we have understanding, not just fast and pray. Fasting and prayers without understanding isn't going to help. Reciting without understanding isn't going to help. So, back to the story. The Imam says that in Yaqub alayhi salam, he used to slaughter and feed, and that believer who was often fasting and was deserving passed by his house and asked, yet they did not feed him. Now, they perhaps had already fed many poor, and now they thought, this is our portion. Let's say for example, every day Yaqub alayhi salam would slaughter a sheep and would give half of it, or let's say 3/4 in charity, and keep 1/4 for him and his family. And he had a big family. Remember? 12 boys. Now, how many girls? I don't know. Wives, and the children of the children. Some of them had children. So again, big family. So whatever he kept for the family had remained, and they had already given charity. So this person who was asking on this Friday, he was not fed. They did not feed him. What happened? Therefore, it was a Friday. It was the iftar time of this man. He was calling at the door of Yaqub, and he was not fed, and he passed. They all ate, and he passed hungry. Istarja'a wasta'bar. Istarja'a means inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is istarja'a. To say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was upset. We belong to God, we return to God. He said that. Wasta'bar means he was in tears. وَشَكَى جُوعَهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. He complained about his hunger to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. وَبَاتَ طَاوِيًا. He slept in pain, in terms of the hunger pain. وَأَصْبَحَ صَائِمًا. He fasted the next day. The next day he started his day fasting and hungry, more hungry now. And he was patient and thankful, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. صابرا حامدا لله تعالى. While وآت يعقوب وآل يعقوب شبعاً بطعنا. They slept full, with, they were satisfied and full with a full stomach. وأصبحوا وعندهم فصلة من طعامهم أو فضلة عفوا فضلة من طعامهم. And they even had some leftovers. So they did not feed thinking this is our share. They ended up having leftovers. There are lessons in this, by the way. Does this remind you of anyone who was about to eat and somebody knocked at their door? Huh? Yes, the story of Ahlul Bayt. Quran is revealed about them. Surah Al-Insan came in praise of Abrar, the most righteous, the most pious. إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا. First praised them and then spoke about their actions and then praised them again. يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما. They fulfill their nadr, their vow with God, and they fear on the day of judgment, and they feed. The story tells us that they fed those people who asked them, and they remained hungry. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. So they fed when they remained hungry. This is Ahlul Bayt salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim. In other words, they would put others before themselves. So what was expected of Yaqub in that position is to tell his family, feed him from your share. Okay? Even though we fed enough people, we give charity, now this person is asking, feed him. He did not, and they did not feed. They all slept full, and they even had leftovers. فَأَوْحَى اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. God revealed to Yaqub alayhi salam on that morning, the next morning, في صبيحة تلك الليلة لقد أذللت يا يعقوب عبدي. O Yaqub, you humiliated my servant. ذلة استجررت بها غضبي. Through that, you now have earned my wrath. غضب. واستوجبت بها أدبي. Now you have obliged or put me in a position where I need to discipline you. هو يعقوب عليه السلام. ونزول عقوبتي وبلواي عليك وعلى ولدك, to you and your family, your children. They were all participating. إن أحب أنبيائي إلي وأكرمهم علي من رحم مساكين عبادي. The most beloved amongst my prophets and the most honorable ones are those who are most merciful to the poor ones amongst my servants. And وقربهم, he brings them near. وأطعمهم, كان له مأوى وملجأ, he became a home for them, a refuge for them. يا يعقوب أنا رحمت بالياد. So the man's name, that servant, was the Yad. Okay, the narration mentions the name of the man. أنا رحمت بالياد عبدي المجتهد في عبادته القانع باليسير. My servant who is striving in worshiping, who accepts little باليسير من ظاهر الدنيا. He accepts little of what is in this dunya. Did you not have mercy on him last night? At the time of his iftar, and he asked for food. وَهَتَفَ بِكُمْ أَطْعِمُوا السَّائِلَ الْغَرِيبَ. And فَلَمْ تُطْعِمُوهُ شَيْئًا فَاسْتَرْجَعَ وَاسْتَكْبَرَ. He complained to me, and he slept hungry, started his day fasting, while you and your children are full, and you had leftovers. Therefore, the uquba is coming. So prepare yourself, because my wrath and discipline comes to my beloved ones sooner than it comes to the enemies. He says, yes, أن العقوبة والبلوى إلى أوليائي أسرع منها إلى أعدائي وذلك حسن النظر إليه. Because of my love for you, I don't want you to go further away, and therefore the torment comes soon. Whereas for A'da, for the enemies, I allow them to go as far as they want. They're enemies, they're not going to learn lessons, by the way. If God was to punish them, it would be even worse. They won't learn the lesson, they become even more defiant and perhaps sinful. So he says, prepare yourself and your children because you will receive my discipline. بعقوبتي فاستعدوا لبلواه وارضوا بقضائي, and be pleased with what I decree and be patient. واصبروا للمصائب. So الثماني, he asked, he says, فقلت لعلي بن الحسين عليه السلام, I said to Imam Zayn عليه السلام, جعلت فداك, I have sacrificed for you. متى رأى يوسف الرؤيا? When did Yusuf see this dream? Remember we said, قال يوسف لأبيه, the dream that Yusuf had. When did he see that dream? Because he now is making the connection. He's making the connection between the dream and the punishment and revelation from God to Yaqub alayhi salam. So he said, Mata, when did that happen? فقال في تلك الليلة. Yusuf had that dream on that very night. The night that that poor person was asking and was not fed was the night that Yusuf alayhi salam had that dream. في تلك الليلة. So then, فقال في تلك الليلة التي مات فيها يعقوب وآل يعقوب شراعا, while they slept full or satisfied their hunger, and the Niyal slept hungry, جائعا. And when Yusuf had his dream and he woke up in the morning, he told his father, يقصها على أبيه يعقوب فاغتم يعقوب. Yaqub now became in grief. So grief for one's mistakes, sins, is beautiful. Grief for things that we miss out on in this world for God's decree is not good, not beautiful. Yes. I'm sure.
And for me as well. First of all, I thought that the prophets.
I'll repeat the question. Yes.
That question, first of all, even when we talk about prophet after history content, we usually say that it was meant to be for him to come to this world. So even in this case, you could say that it was meant for Prophet Yusuf to go to that place. So just that whole question of
Infallibility.
Yeah.
So let's address that. Or do you want to ask first? Okay, go ahead. Okay, let me address that, and inshallah we'll get to the next one. So the question that I'm sure many of you would have thought of it, which is an important question. Anbiya Allah, the prophets of God, we believe are infallible. Yes? And infallible means sinless, they don't commit sins. Yes? In fact, some of our great scholars, they say, Anbiya Allah would not even commit tarkul awla. And I'll explain. So, to say that the prophets are infallible, this is unanimous in the school of Ahlul Bayt. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt emphasized on this matter so frequently and responded to every controversy that arises, including ayat of the Holy Quran that may seem contradictory to the concept of infallibility, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt responded and terrified. There's a good discussion between Imam Rada alayhi salam and Al-Ma'mun. If you look it up, it's available even in English. Debate between Imam Rada alayhi salam and Al-Ma'mun regarding the infallibility of the prophets of God. It answers pretty much every question that is there regarding the prophets who are mentioned in the Quran to have done certain things that may sound they did the wrong thing. And the answer is that they did not do the wrong thing, they did not commit a sin. So we all agree in the school of Ahlul Bayt that the prophets are sinless, they don't commit sins. That's one. Then things like this had arise, riwayat of this nature. He should have fed, he didn't feed. The first thing is said that this is not a sin. Okay? At his level, this shouldn't have happened. Okay? But it wasn't a sin. So they call it tarkul awla, neglect of what's best. So it's not a sin, but it's neglect of what's best. So the best thing for him to do was to feed, and he did not feed. Therefore, he deserved discipline from God. Okay? This is one response. There is another argument. Some of our scholars, and I tend to line up to more aligned with those, that Anbiya Allah and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt wouldn't even commit Tarkul Awla in the way people understand it. Meaning what? People think they would knowingly neglect what's best. Knowingly. And the answer is no, they would never do that. Meaning what? If they knew that this is good and this is better, okay, this path is the best and this path is okay. Two things. One is pleasing, one is more pleasing to God. Which one would the prophets of God choose? The more pleasing. Okay? Anbiya and Awsiya, Awliya Allah, the Imams, they choose the more pleasing, no doubt. So there is no Tarkul Awla. How do you say there's Tarkul Awla? That they would leave the more pleasing and go to the less pleasing. They say they do it without knowing, not through knowing. If they knew, they would never do it. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, I was never put in a position to decide between things that are pleasing to God, except that I chose the most pleasing. So there's no doubt about non-pleasing. That is not even an argument. Okay? In the paths of what's pleasing to God, he says, I would always choose the most pleasing. The most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happened in these cases? They did not know. It was their lack of awareness and understanding that led to that mistake. At their level, they should have done better. Okay? So they didn't choose the less good knowingly. Okay? They made a mistake due to being unaware. Did they deserve discipline? Yes. So back to this question of Adam alayhi salam. Adam alayhi salam was deceived by Shaitan. Iblis swore to them, according to Imam alayhi salam, when Iblis swore to them that what I'm telling you is for your benefit, is the good thing. You can be eternally in worship of God. وَقَاسَمَهُمَا Quran says he swore to both of them. وَقَاسَمَهُمَا إِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ When he swore to them, they did not think that anyone can swear and tell a lie. Because they thought if somebody brings the name of God in a lie, they would be exposed and punished immediately. And so they believed him, and he dragged them into it. فَدَلَّاهُمَا, dragged both of them, not one through the other. فَدَلَّاهُمَا بِغُرُورٍ. So they did what they did. فَلَمَّا ذَاقَا الشَّجَرَ, when they tasted, they barely tasted and they realized immediately. The awakening came immediately to them. However, there was a mistake. The discipline was out of the garden. Now, was it meant to be by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Different argument, different discussion, we'll leave it to later. Come back to this one. In this case, Yaqub alayhi salam and his family should have done better. Ahlul Bayt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it in plural. It wasn't just the decision of Imam Ali alayhi salam. It was the decision of the family. In al-Abrara, all of them. A collective decision. Perhaps, maybe we don't have those details, but the way I see it, and the way the Quran puts it, it's not two of them, so it's not even just the parents. In al-Abrana, and then it says, يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ, and then what? وَيُطْعِمُونَ. It's not وَيُطْعِمَانِ. Unanimously, Mufassiri, unanimously say this was regarding that incident. Pretty much, Sunni and Shia, they say it. Okay? Except the Nawasib, the haters, they ignore it or neglect it and don't bring it up. But everybody else says this is about Fatima, Ali, or Fatima. Okay? This is about them. They did their nether, and they fulfilled their nether, and they were breaking their fast, and then they fed. The ayah says, يُطْعِمُونَ. In other words, all of them collectively were feeding. In my humble opinion, the father and the mother had to present the case to the children because the food was the right of everyone. We have food. What do we do? These people are asking, this poor person is asking. Me as the father and the mother, we are willing to give away our food. Are you willing, our children? And they must have said yes. For them to give. And collectively, Quran says, وَيُطْعِمُونَ, and they feed. Not يُطْعِمَانِ, not two of them, not just the parents, all of them. Parents and children. So this was the family who gave. In this case, Yaqub and his family. Maybe Yaqub thought, okay, I have my family, they're hungry. And this is what we kept. We already did our charity, and this is their share. And maybe at that point, maybe he himself didn't mind giving, but he thought it's theirs anyway. Regardless, him and his family should have done better. If he knew that this was what's best, he would have done it. What happened is that he had to be disciplined because he should have known better. I'll give you an example. There was a story of one of our scholars, one of our very, very, in fact, very pious and very practicing scholars. He was a teacher in ethics, akhlaq. He was teaching akhlaq to his students. One of his students came one day, and the teacher suddenly was very, very upset with him and spoke to him harshly. And he said to his student, he said, "How dare you come to my class to study akhlaq, yet your neighbor sleeps hungry? How could you do that?" So then the student says, "By God, my teacher, I didn't know. I didn't know. If I knew, I would have fed it." He says, "If you knew, I would not have allowed you to come here. It would have been the end. If you knew, you wouldn't have a chance to be here anymore." The fact that you didn't know is what upsets you. That is bad enough. If you knew and you didn't feed him, you're out. There's absolutely no connection. Okay? So in this case, Yaqub alayhi salam didn't know. Didn't know, for example, that this person is genuine. They fed the poor. This is why the story began with Imam Zayd alayhi salam saying, feed everyone. And so Ali was saying, Rasulullah, not everyone who's asking deserves. Some of them might be faking it. They're not deserving. The Imam says, feed them. I don't want what happened to Yaqub to happen to us Ahlul Bayt. So what was it then? It was a state of them. We fed the hungry, we gave our fair share, and now what's remaining, we're eating with the family. Therefore, they didn't think that they're doing something wrong or they're failing in their responsibility towards the needy and the hungry and so on. And therefore, I hope that answers that question.
The second part of the question was about forgiveness. And keep mentioning the word discipline. God always talks about being forgiving.
So forgiveness versus discipline. Why would God need to discipline? Why would He forgive? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He puts us through those things, these trials and tribulations and difficulties, it's for us to grow. Okay? So His discipline is through His mercy and love. It's not lack of it. Okay? اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء. I ask you by your mercy that encompasses everything. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, my mercy encompassed everything. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسَعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. It encompassed everything. Amazingly, the ayah says, فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا. I will write it specifically now for specific people. Now, the first one says it's available for everybody. The second one is specifying that those who accept it will be gaining more of it. The more we accept, the more we receive. So His discipline is through His love and mercy, and He says it in the same hadith. He says that it is because my awliya, I don't want them to go away, to go astray. Maybe the only way we can really learn and change is through difficulty, through going through the consequences of our actions. Okay, perhaps it doesn't happen if, there is a difference between knowing, believing, and that faith to be deep enough to reflect in our actions. Okay? So there's a saying, al-imanu, first iman level is lisan, aql bil-lisan. And then the heart follows. Eventually, وَعَمَلُ بِالْأَرْكَانِ. It comes to the action. Okay, actions follow that faith. Now, is that available for everybody? By just knowing without living it and experiencing it and going through it and realizing the realities, would it happen by just knowing? In most cases, that's not how it works. Okay? We have to go through the trials or the difficulty and therefore realize learn the lessons and realize the reality. So that is not lack of mercy, rather it is ayn al-rahmah. It is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and special mercy for His awliya that He puts them through those so that they can grow closer to Him and grow stronger in their faith and their in action that testifies to their faith. So there's tasdeeq and amal. We call it, صادقا مصدقا. In ziyarah of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, we say صادقا مصدقا بالقول والفعل. He tells the truth, he's sadiq, and his actions testify to his beliefs. Okay, many of us in ulama al-akhlaq, in our halaqa, we have been discussing this, that they classify levels of certainty, okay, or levels of tawheed. One's yaqeen, at a very shallow level, everybody says, La ilaha illallah, okay? And everybody, every Muslim, yeah, every believer, only one God. Every believer would often say, or many of them would often recite, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. But how many of them actually know or believe in that in their hearts to the level that it shows in their actions? Okay? How many people think it's the boss? How many people think that my spouse, you know, that one of the problems we're having nowadays is many divorces. Big problem. Inshallah, we can tackle that collectively. It requires a lot of work that we should all do together to reduce or eliminate this problem. Big problem, unfortunately. How many think that my spouse is the cause of my misery? If I'm struggling, it's because of him or because of her. Isn't that shirk? Is that la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah? That is literally where la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah is wrong. If I really believe la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, then so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes gives us some disciplinary lessons and things that we go through our lives if we deserve it, if we're going to take those lessons, if we're amongst the believers, so that we come to a point where I now know that la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Okay. So now I'm certain that only what God wants happens. Now I'm certain if I deserve better, I will have better circumstances, whichever it is. Okay? And nobody can decide for me unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it. Not a boss, not a spouse, not a neighbor, nothing. Absolutely nothing can better my circumstances if God doesn't allow it. And He says we will change them once you change what's within yourselves. The circumstances will only change when we change from within. So we learn the lessons, we change the heart, the mind, and therefore the actions all are in line with what we're saying, the testimony of faith. Therefore, circumstances will change. So, again, the disciplinary thing is part of the mercy. Inshallah, that covers. The riwayah is longer, but from here on, it gets into the rest of the story. So I'm going to continue and we'll go back and forth between the ayah and the riwayat about this. Yes. So the question is, when we speak about neighbors, we live in today's world, sometimes in a subdivision, apartment building, house, whatever it is. How far is the neighborhood? Now, at the time of the Prophet, the narration said 40 homes from each direction. Okay, so 40 neighbors going each way. Now, that may be less or more, but at least we can cover that. Okay, meaning, and typically this is what happens in a community. Okay, if people live on farmland, okay, there is a big distance. Like we have a big distance between neighbors. Okay, so the community know each other as this is our neighborhood. These are the people we interact with, our immediate neighbor here, there, you know, the few. In certain apartment buildings, perhaps that block becomes the neighborhood. So plays a role. One is that the norms of the society plays a role in the identification of who is considered a neighbor. So that varies. And the response that was given by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not necessarily limiting or specifying, rather giving a suggestion. It's just people ask, Ya Rasulullah, you say neighbor, 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 how do I know? He said from every direction 40. So did they have to go and count exactly? No, it's to say generally this is what it is. Wallahu a'lam. So what the norms of a healthy society, okay, not of a disconnected society. The norms of a healthy community and society, what is considered neighbor, is what we have to at least yeah, so neighbors being of different faith, different colors, and so on, does not negate their neighborhood. The obligations are based on what is possible and what is, again, the norms of the society determine. Okay. Connecting, the responsibility of the believer is to connect with their neighbor. Okay, connecting with them, keeping in touch, asking how they are. Nowadays, phone numbers are easy, so exchanging numbers with neighbors, and every now and then checking on them. So then you hear that one of the neighbors is struggling. They're going through, he lost his job, whatever they're going through, a problem, a financial, difficulty, and so on. So you offer, how can we be of help, for instance? So one has to do to the best of their ability. They have to connect and do this to be a good neighbor. The more we do, the more we resemble the Prophet Ahlul Bayt sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So back to the ayat, inshallah we'll try and cover the next ayah, ayah 5. So ayah 4 was the narration of the dream. Okay, so Yusuf alayhi salam, he narrated his dream to his father. His father responded, قال in ayah number 5, قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا. Perhaps based on what he had known from the nature of the family, and based in the riwayah, based on him knowing that now there will be tribulations. Okay? They will face difficulty. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is important to keep in mind, if the brothers wanted to harm Yusuf, they had their jealousy. It was there. If they wanted to harm him, and God did not want to allow it, could they have harmed him? No, of course not. No matter who comes to try and harm me, if God doesn't want to allow it, it won't happen. Okay. So now, Yaqub alayhi salam, he knew, because he is now subject to the discipline from God, that now he might be facing difficulty through his children. And God had revealed to him that your children, you're collectively going to be going through trials and tribulations. So he then said to his son, my son, لا تقصص. We said qasas means to, literally means to follow the effect, the footsteps, the marks, the trail. But it refers to the story, or to narrate a story. So he says, do not narrate or tell the story of your dream, ru'yaka. He says ru'ya is from seeing, but seeing as in the dream. Ala ikhwatika, upon your brothers. Ikhwa is jam of akh. Akh is the brother, ikhwa is the plural. Ikhwati jam, your brothers. فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا. Then they will plot against you, for you, they will make a plot. Kaida is to exaggerate or to make it the reason why it is what we call nakira. It's not specific, it means it's big. They'll make a big plot against you. فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا. And then he continued to say, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Surely, Shaitan is a clear enemy. Adu is an enemy. Mubin is clear. لِلْإِنسان, for insan, Shaitan is a clear enemy. So, question. He said, your brothers will plot a big plot for you. Yes? Who will do it? The brothers. Then why does he say in the shaitan? He said, Aduun bi. So who plot? Shaitan or the brothers? Both? Quran is saying, Yakidu. They will plot, the brothers. And then shaitan is enemy. Very important point. Most of the time, people, whenever they do something wrong, they put it on who? Shaitan. Blame. Blame shaitan. Allah yana shaitan. Ana shaitan. Here is shaitan. He does something wrong, here is shaitan. They did it. Who plot? Yakidu. Shaitan helps them. What happens is, if we do not allow shaitan, he cannot do anything. If we don't follow nafsul amara, it says the biggest enemy against you is your nafs. أَنْدَ عَدُوُّكَ نَفْسُكَ الَّتِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ. Your biggest enemy is your nafs. Before you blame shaitan, seek return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recognize the problem within yourself, within myself. I have to look at the problem and try and solve the problem so it doesn't happen again. Don't just blame shaitan and walk away. No. Look at the problem and do tazkiyah. Istighfar, tawbah. First, recognize the issue. Regret what you had done. The brothers had jealousy. Due to their jealousy and lack of purification, lack of tazkiyah, they decided to plot. And what happened? Shaitan helps them. Al-awwal wa thani were jealous. The first and the second Khalifa were jealous with Ahlul Bayt. Were jealous with Imam Ali alayhi salam. The daughters were jealous with Fatima sallallahu. Okay? They didn't purify. And so who gave the first bay'ah? According to riwayat, Shaitan gave bay'ah. Okay? First Omar says, Mudda yadaka li ubay'ak. Extend your hand, I'll give you bay'ah. And then they saw an old man that the riwayah says that was Shaitan impersonated that person who came. Quraysh wanted to assassinate and kill the Prophet. Decided they want to kill him. But they didn't know how to do it. Who wanted to kill him? Shaitan? Of course. But who was planning? They themselves. Quraysh. Then Shaitan came and gave them the plot. If you want to kill him and no one will be blamed, bring a man from every tribe. 40 men will come and strike at once. The blood is distributed, then Bani Hashim cannot revenge. Because they didn't want this blood to be on their hands and this ongoing war within Quraysh because of Bani Hashim having, that blood of the Prophet ﷺ, that they want to revenge for. How do we do it? Shaitan gave them the power. Who wanted to kill? They wanted to kill. Shaitan helps them. In the Quran also, we read that my nafs, and then Shaitan comes and helps. وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها. My nafs betrayed me. And then Shaitan comes and assists, helps, even facilitates, yes.
When we do something makes sense that we make step in the chain. There's two places in the Quran where it mentions Shaitan made him forget. So in the Prophet, in the story of Yusuf later on, when one of the prisoners forgot to mentions Shaitan made him forget.
Yeah.
That's what people act, but the act of forgetfulness.
Yeah.
And even if it's very hard, when that person, the Prophet he says Shaitan made him forget.
Yeah. وما أنسانيه إلا الشيطان وما أذكر حتى. Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah. So number one, when it comes to whispering to us to help us with evil plots, okay, if we did not have those intentions or those, God forbid, the thoughts, jealousy, arrogance, and so on, the shayateen would not be able to do much. Okay? We are allowing them by not purifying when it comes to actual evil acts. Can they impact us and influence us to make us forget? We have multiple ayat and riwayat that suggest that they do. Okay. Now, for instance, there's a riwayah about Salatul Layl. In fact, inshallah, we don't neglect Salatul Layl. We try and make even if it's one rakah. Even if it's one rakah. Try to start with one. If you can't do 11, do the one. Or 3. Or you can increase. Okay. If you can't do, just do one. You can't do 11 rakah, just do one. According to the riwayat, there is an angel. There are angels who wake us up to do Salatul Layl. And they repeat. And every time they do, Shaitan comes and says, sleep, you still have time. Now, the end part is not so beautiful, but should I share it? So until it lapses, time is gone. So the hadith says, فَيَقُولُ فِي أُذُنِهِ. He basically urinates in the ear. Okay? Basically, I got you. This is what you deserve. This is how filthy. Now, we see protection and refuge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan and his waswasa and his remnants he leaves. But yes, they do whisper and make us forget at times and make us neglect at times. Sleeping, angel is waking us up. Every time we're alert or aware that we can get up, they say, don't worry, we have time, and so on. So they do have that as well. There are armies of them. Okay? For certain believers, the more one is doing good, the more shayateen come to basically help each other against the individual. So yes, they do their best. But if one sincerely purifies and seeks protection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God will protect him against even his forgetfulness and so on. So this is why in this story, who made him forget, Shaitan made who forget, there's a difference. Whether Shaitan made that man forget, or Shaitan made Yusuf forget. Some Mufassirin and mostly the other schools, they say that it was Shaitan made Yusuf alayhi salam forget to remember his Lord. Whereas our Mufassirin, they say no, that was Shaitan making that man forget. Because Shaitan cannot make a prophet forget the remembrance of God. In the awliya'i, you have no laysa alayhim sultan. You have no authority of my awliya. So Yusuf obviously is one of awliya Allah. I think that question we should come to that. Unless there are any other questions. Any other questions or clarifications? Otherwise, inshallah, we'll conclude with as we said the ending with إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the wasawis, from the whispering of shayateen, and allow us to be with his awliya, with his special friends and special servants, so that inshallah we are protected from shayateen and from our anfus, our nafs, and also the desires and the whims of the nafs. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Let us remember all of our, especially those who are participating here, especially the ones who are facilitating and providing the dinner. Inshallah, we'll remember them all with Fatiha.
اللهم صل على محمد